Fourth gene key, a universal panacea. Siddhi, forgiveness. Gift, understanding. Shadow, intolerance. Programming partner, 49 gene key. Codon ring, the ring of union. 4, 7, 29, 59. Physiology, neocortex. Amino acid, valine. The fourth shadow, intolerance. The folly of youth. When the ancient Chinese named this fourth hexagram of the I Ching, they gave it wonderful name, youthful folly, and in doing so, they showed a profound understanding of its lower nature. The fourth shadow, the shadow of intolerance, is rooted in the mind's habit of becoming tangled up with human emotions. Intolerance is best understood through its relationship to its programming partner, the 49th shadow of reaction. Because human beings are governed by their emotions, the general emotional state of humanity is unstable and chaotic. We tend to react to our whims instead of attuning to the quiet, clear guidance that lies within each of us. In reacting to our own and others' emotions, we decide that what we feel must be the truth, and our mind agrees with us. The fourth shadow is essentially a misuse of one of the great gifts of the human mind, logic. The power of this fourth gene key is the power to read and solve logical patterns. And as we shall see in the case of the fourth gift, this ability leads you to a universal understanding of the rhythmic patterns and tendencies of all life. However, at a low frequency based on emotional reaction or overreaction, the shadow uses the power of distorted logic to support and uphold its volatile nature. In other words, if the fourth shadow has a bad day and decides it doesn't like someone, it will find a whole list of logical reasons to support its dislike. This is what intolerance really is, a slanted perspective of logic. At the shadow frequency, the mind is actually given the authority to make important life decisions and is often disastrous because its true role is not to decide anything. Its true role is to understand and communicate. The aptness of the name youthful folly becomes apparent when you see what happens at the shadow reaches an extreme emotional state. At the shadow frequency, you identify absolutely with your emotional state, which defines the way you live your life. Any unresolved emotional pattern is taken up by your mind and built into a highly intricate logical framework that masquerades as the absolute truth. Through the medium of the fourth shadow, opinions, judgments, and resentments are transmuted into convictions and certainties. In this way, people blind themselves with their own logic and can become deluded and sometimes dangerous. Intolerance is based on a subjective distortion of logic, which only measures patterns that a person wants to see, rather than seeing all patterns from both sides of an argument. The power of the fourth gift of understanding is founded upon this ability to objectively assess all aspects of viewpoint, thus avoiding the pitfall of taking sides. The human logical mind is actually not designed to take sides. The essence of logic is its foundation upon objectivity. Yes, baby. Come, let me switch it for you. What you want to watch, baby?
A mermaid.
There's a bunch of mermaids there. You pick the one you want. And don't keep it close to your face, okay? Okay. The human logical mind is actually not designed to take sides. The essence of logic is its foundation upon objectivity. But in the hands of fear, objectivity dies and logic becomes subjective, even at a collective level. You may wonder how something can be both collective and subjective. Racism and prejudice are examples of genetic or ancestral fears that manifest through certain population groups who then reinforce these fears through subjective logical argumentation. Even science is rarely truly objective unless it remains open to all counter-arguments. In the case of science, a counter-argument might come from religion, which challenges logic as the only means of acquiring truth. Only when science is skeptical of its very own nature can it really be regarded as truly objective. The fourth shadow forms a very subtle undercurrent to all human mental structures, from the scientific to the spiritual. It cannot help taking sides. The underlying nature of all the shadow states is fear. In the case of the fourth shadow, fear is projected onto others and then reinforced through taking a defensive and sometimes offensive mental position. This is how intolerance is created, and it is sometimes extremely subtle. Intolerance bases its position on opinion rather than fact. If you took the time to examine the other side of the argument, you would immediately understand that your opinion is rooted in a deep-seated emotional fear of something. The great problem with logic is that it can only disprove itself, which does not make human beings feel at all secure. Therefore, most people choose one single side of an argument because it makes them feel a certain mental solidity. Ironically, however, mental assuredness cannot make the body feel safe. The body can only feel safe when it surrenders to the moment without wanting something else. Like myself right now, I continue reading the book I decided to read and record it because I decided to share, dismissing that barking sausage of my neighbors because we already ordered what is that called, dog whistle machine that we will simply put in our yard and train that dog to stop barking, because that person was already kicked out of previous apartment because of that dog. So we're stuck here for a minute. Let's continue. The fourth shadow is endlessly restless in its need to examine patterns and resolve questions. If anything, this dog will teach me to speak louder so I can be heard and so I can preserve my thoughts when they're interfered with something unpleasant. So anything we create in our reality is our creation. Thus, I take responsibility for manifesting a neighbor with an annoying dog that makes me speak up. Let's continue. One answer is simply replaced by another question. The role of this gene key is to understand, but understanding cannot come through the mind itself. This is the essence of the fourth shadow's dilemma, and it keeps many people from realizing its gift. Understanding, as we shall see, only comes when you realize that your mind could never truly understand anything. Before you come to this huge inner realization, you will live your life under the influence of the fourth shadow and its persistent promise that it will one day arrive at an answer that brings you lasting peace. This is youthful folly, because only after much anguish and experience do you come to realize that there are no intellectual answers that bring about such peace. There are only two options for the fourth shadow. You either settle for a one-sided opinion and deny the other side, or you become lost in the fruitless quest to bring an end to the feeling of uncertainty that lies deep within you. Unless you take the leap into the true understanding of the fourth gift, you have no choice but to be caught in eternal misunderstanding and intolerance. Repressive nature, apathetic. When the mental dynamism of this fourth gene key is frozen by the unconscious fear of repressive nature, the result is an apathetic mind. An apathetic mind is a collapsed mind that is no longer bright or intelligent, but has given up on understanding anything and sunk into a kind of mental lethargy. These people believe themselves to be less intelligent than others, when in fact they are really paralyzed by an unconscious fear. Their fear is that they will have to assume responsibility for themselves, their decisions, and their actions, which they will have to do, because we all do. Instead, they choose to have no opinions about anything. Such people can pretend to be quite enlightened and very open, but there is a vital energy lacking inside them. Thus, they can have problems in motivation as well as with their health. To escape their apathy, they simply have to start thinking again, but without letting their thinking rule their lives. Reactive nature, nitpicking. In the reactive nature, thinking does rule a person's life. Their reactive nature projects out its eternal need for answers to questions, and it does so in the belief that these answers will bring them a sense of security. When they discover that this is not so, they become angry and blame someone, often the person or system that they supposed would give them all the answers. These people cannot let go of their need for some feeling of resolution, so they make their mind the authority for bringing about this feeling, only to be endlessly disappointed. These people hone in on the most irrelevant details, unconsciously looking for a vent for their frustration. When they find such a detail, it affords them the opportunity to criticize or complain, and thus release some of their pent-up anger and tension. These people, above all, need to find a way to let go of the hope that their mind can never bring them solace. When they do this, they can finally stop projecting their eternal disappointment onto others and begin to find a new awareness arising in them outside of their mind. The fourth gift, understanding. Quantum quants. If you are someone with powerful intellectual capacities, the fourth gift represents a wonderful breath of fresh air for you. At the same time, it requires a huge quantum leap in your whole being. The gift of understanding has nothing whatsoever to do with knowledge. Knowledge is what your mind thinks it needs in order to take away its permanent feeling of unease. But knowledge can never bring a sense of peacefulness. At most, it can give you the hope of that peace, although ironically, it is this very hope that sustains your intellectual quest and keeps you within the confines of the shadow frequency, which is intolerance. Only true understanding can bring peace along with it, because true understanding lies outside the domain of the mind. Understanding is of the whole being, and it does not and cannot require agreement from the cognitive capacities within your brain. If you allow the fourth gene key to run its natural course without giving it the responsibility to make decisions, it actually does something quite magical. It propels your awareness out of the mind. The very desperation of the mind to come to understanding through knowledge constantly thwarts itself by looking at life from every conceivable angle. At a certain point, all this pent-up energy explodes into a quantum leap out of the mind. This is precisely how the concept of the Zen koan operates. A koan is a paradox given to the mind to solve, and at the precise moment when the mind has finally released that its own logic can never solve, the koan understanding dawns. This quantum leap is true understanding, which is a feeling of knowing that floods your whole body and radiates from the solar plexus area. So I say this a lot: punch yourself in the gut, punch yourself in the gut, punch yourself in the gut, because you got to connect with this area. The gift of understanding is the only answer that will satisfy a person's dissatisfaction, and it must come about through the exhaustion of your mind rather than any other way. When you look logically at all angles of any concept, you begin to realize that nothing can ultimately be proved through logic, because logic can always be used to prove the opposite. When you finally see this, your whole being lightens, because you realize once and for all that the mind is of no use for resolving anything of real importance. This in turn releases the mind to do what it loves best: research and communicate and play. So what mind loves doing best is research, communicate, and play. When the fourth gift is freed from having to solve your existence, it finally comes into its real genius, to play with the patterns of existence and arrange them in new and original ways. When you have the feeling of visceral understanding deep in your belly, your mind is no longer hampered with the need to defend your own viewpoint. In fact, you realize that all logical formula can be manipulated to prove or disprove anything. The higher frequency of such understanding also brings with it the urge to be of service to the world, and you can use the mental mental alacrity of the fourth gift to follow the dictates of your higher self. This newfound genius at seeing the underlying patterns of life also affords you direct access into another aspect of this fourth gift: the ability to understand people. Through seeing all sides of any mental construct, the gift of understanding sweeps aside the possibility of intolerance and uses its gifts to create new roles or systems to bring positive change into the world. The programming partner of the fourth gift is the 49th gift of revolution, and this energy always accompanies true understanding. The very nature of understanding is to bring about improvement for society in general, since the dynamic energy within this fourth gift is still experienced as a certain restlessness. Whereas at the shadow level, this was the restlessness to resolve your own insecurity. At the gift frequency, this becomes the restlessness to resolve the insecurity within society in general. Thus, understanding always carries within it the seed intention to solve the problems of intolerance and division in the world. In the coming genetic shift triggered to the 55th gene key, that is my life's path, and the 49th gene key, the role of this fourth gift will undergo some very important genetic changes, aka mutation from Homo sapiens to Homo sanctus, which will gradually sweep through humanity through disease. The involution of powerful Siddhic energy from the highest aspect of this archetype will bring about a minor but extremely important genetic mutation in this fourth gene key and its associated amino acid valine. This mutation will essentially phase out the fourth shadow of intolerance. The children that come into the world carrying this new sequence of mutations will not be emotionally polarized. Their mental system will not run riot throughout their lives. The fourth gift of understanding will govern the way in which their minds operate from birth. They will bring about a social revolution on a global level, and this revolution will be based upon a logical understanding of the folly of the existing systems and structures. New formula will come into the world through this fourth gift that will undoubtedly lead to technological breakthroughs that solve long-standing problems rather than create new ones. The fourth Siddhi, forgiveness. Merciless forgiveness. Not only will the coming shift bring about a social revolution, but it will also bring an end to one of the great searches of modern man, the search for knowledge. Through the rupturing of the fourth shadow, understanding will take place of knowledge, and much of the trust of our modern world will die down. We will no longer need to logically make sense of the paradoxes of existence, because our new center of awareness will give us a physical and energetic understanding of existence. Thus, the role of logic in our world will alter. It will no longer be used to defend our prejudices and fears, and it will no longer be used for purely personal benefit. Logic at its highest frequency is a means to orchestrate the most efficient society possible. True efficiency is based upon a higher holistic understanding of living systems. Once our understanding shows us how connected we all are to each other, we will see for ourselves that selfishness is the most inefficient frequency of all. The fourth gift forms the launch pad for an even more refined frequency, the siddhi of forgiveness. Forgiveness is born out of understanding, but it occurs when a being makes a leap beyond understanding. Forgiveness is a stage further on from social revolution. Just because a person has understanding and good intention does not mean that they can orchestrate a perfect society. History has shown that revolutions never change the world. They just change society, and usually only briefly. The highest possibility of the 49th gene key is the siddhi of rebirth, and this is the siddhi that always awakens alongside forgiveness. As we have seen, understanding leads to the urge to serve the totality through instigating some kind of social reform. Forgiveness, however, is a pure siddhic state, and as such it has no sense of restlessness at all. All siddhic states are the end of the line. They represent the absolute transcendence of four genetics and the end of being human. Forgiveness is the thunderbolt that is released when a being attains Christ consciousness. Christ, crystal clear Christ. It is like a kind of cosmic warmth that melts the borders and boundaries within the world of form. Forgiveness allows the truth behind all form to be seen. Further than that, it allows one to see through and thus become one with truth. There exists a great mystery about the power of forgiveness concerning time. Forgiveness represents an evolving force rather than evolving force because it literally comes from the future towards the past. It is a divine quality that descends like Christ into the world of form. In descending into human form, forgiveness lays its hand upon all humanity and works its way back through time, burrowing into our collective past, releasing and freeing energy that has lain trapped and stagnant for eons. Forgiveness moves down the ancestral bloodlines of all humanity in this way, dissolving genetic blocks and lifting karmic curses wherever it travels. This is why the siddhi of forgiveness is often credited with being capable of inducing miracles, because it can release a karmic depth that has stagnated for generations. As such depths are released, those in whom they live can move through incredible transmutations. These mysteries are explored in more depth in 22nd gene key through a transmission known as the Seven Seals. The fourth siddhi is a primary agent of divine grace, that is to say, it does not adhere to human laws. It concerns the resolution of all depths at all levels. At a purely individual level, the whole process of human incarnation is based around the notion of karmic depth. Until you have paid all your debts, particularly through your relationships, you cannot escape the game of incarnation and reincarnation. Because it is also a part of the ring of union, the fourth siddhi, ultimate role of the fourth siddhi is to bring humanity into collective union through a resolution of karmic debt, individually, racially, and mythically. In the material realm, we will see this manifesting one day through nations forgiving each other their financial debts. Forgiveness, as such, is really a collective phenomenon, which is why we humans have never been able to control it or fake it. It falls upon you like a surprise, and something inside you opens up that was previously choked. It really is a miracle. As more beings bring this siddhi into the world, they play their part in the releasing of humanity's collective karma. Such beings hold on to nothing in life because they have moved beyond understanding into pure truth. The forgiveness that we know of now is but a tiny shadow in comparison to the beyondness of this fourth siddhi. Pure forgiveness is a universal panacea that radiates in every direction throughout time and space. It is the final answer to end all questions. And when the first atoms of forgiveness finally travel back to the very beginning of time, as they already have, the world we know will begin to dissolve, which it has started doing, right? When all is forgiven, then forgiveness itself no longer exists, only truth. The final destiny of the fourth siddhi is to rupture the connection between the past and future, between the black and white, between the yin and yang, to finally bring an end to the logical fabric of space-time itself. True forgiveness is merciless because it returns everything to its source and is a force of pure annihilation. The ultimate goal of forgiveness is in fact to bring an end to the world of form itself. So that's fourth gene key. That's how it goes. From intolerance, surviving intolerance, gaining understanding, through gaining understanding and gifting it to others, achieving forgiveness, and losing form, and losing the veil, and using the division, and losing all that doesn't matter. See you in next gene key.